Oh man, that was a big bump. Hope I didn't break anything on the suspension with that. What's going on, everybody? We are back for another episode, and we are going to get right back to it. We're going to continue where we left off, talking about the worst driving roads of the Bay Area. If you missed the first one, I talk about the criteria that I used in order to determine what I think of as the worst driving roads. So I won't repeat that again here, but I'll put a link to that video in the description below so you can check it out. And you'll also get to hear me talk about the worst roads in the Bay Area, ranked number 8 to number 4. Now, let's get to it. On to number 3.
Sierra Road is located in the southeast of the Bay Area. It's in the hills east of San Jose. You can see that it goes up from a residential neighborhood up into the hills. And it's a fairly short road, but it does connect you to a couple of other good driving roads. Felter Road takes you up towards Milpitas. I'm going to drop into Google Street View so that you can see what this road looks like. So you can see right here, it's not too bad. It's a 2-lane road going up into the hills. And you'll notice that there's actually quite a nice view up here. You can see a good chunk of San Jose and the South Bay while going up or down this road. So I can see how this would be a popular spot for people to go for a drive, enjoy the view. Certainly lots of people may take this road to go hiking. There are a few trails and things like that along the way, which we'll see in a minute. And over here it's not so bad. You know, the road is paved and it's 2-lane, fairly wide, not super wide, but you know, obviously no problem with cars passing one another here. But as we start to go uphill, you'll start to see where we're gonna run into some problems. Yeah, very scenic with the rolling hills. Very green when it's been raining, so it is a nice place to go for pictures. Okay, see, now we're starting to get up high enough to the point where you can see you are really up there in the hills, and the road starts to get really narrow down to essentially 1-lane width. And at this point you're kind of out there along these hills, almost at the edge of a cliff. You know, if you were to come across another car coming the other way, it's going to be tight. But so far, you know, the visibility is not so bad here. You can kind of see when you're going to potentially come into a situation with oncoming traffic for the most part. But there are these kind of blind corners from time to time. And here's a kind of funny example of, for some reason, a postal truck just kind of parked here in the corner. It's a pretty narrow section of road, so you are going to have to be careful and pass other cars with caution if you encounter them along this part of the road. And there are some guardrails here along some of the cliff sides, but there's also some other sections that I feel can be pretty sketchy when you're driving along with very steep drop-offs. So certainly would make me think twice about going through this section of road at any, you know, amount of speed. And heaven forbid you should want to drive this road at night. Once again, 1-lane roads. So yeah, I mean, it's really scenic. I can see why people like coming up here. So if you do take this road, I would definitely advise caution. think after this point, the road does widen up and remain a 2-lane road for quite some while, a few more miles, as it takes you north towards Milpitas and towards Felter Road and then Calaveras. But coming up here from the San Jose side, taking Sierra Road, definitely not advised. For me, it's just a little too nerve-wracking. Okay, number 2 on my list of the worst driving roads in the Bay Area is a part of Skyline Boulevard. Now you may be saying, wait a second, Skyline Boulevard? Didn't you say in your best driving roads video that Skyline Boulevard is one of your favorite driving roads in the Bay Area? What gives? Well, for the most part, Skyline Boulevard here in the Santa Cruz Mountains is actually one of the best driving roads in the Bay Area. But there's a certain portion of it on the southern end in the hills above Los Gatos that I find to be actually one of the worst driving roads in the Bay Area. And I would definitely advise you to steer clear of this section. If you head far enough south, the road starts to get narrow, and at the point where it intersects with Black Road, it starts to get pretty sketchy. And from here, the road continues further down until you reach Bear Creek Road at the south end. And this particular section is what I would advise you to stay away from. Yep, when you reach this point, the signs don't lie. They basically tell you that the road's going to get narrow for the next 4 miles, and that's pretty much what you're going to get. You'll see it almost immediately becomes what amounts to a 1-lane road. And there's very little room for passing, very small margin for error, and I would hate to come across another car coming the other way while you're blasting through this section. There's no denying that it's very pretty out here, and you might get some amazing views as you drive through this wooded section. So maybe if you go here super early in the morning, you might be able to enjoy this road all to yourself. And in fact, I don't think that this road is that well traveled. I think most people know to stay away from this particular section of road, just because it's so narrow, and unless you live here, there's no real reason to take it. So my advice to you is to leave this place to the residents, the people who actually need to take this road. There are plenty of other more fun roads to drive on, not far away. Yeah, these narrow sections here really resemble more of somebody's personal driveway than an actual highway. So to sum up, this road is very narrow. It's got poor visibility in certain sections, so you might have a hard time seeing what's coming around the bend. And parts of the road can be very bumpy or rough condition. And of course, there are steep drop-offs and other hazardous areas. So you really don't want to be pushing too hard on this section of road anyway. And lastly, it's in a remote location where I think there's probably not very strong cell signals. So all of these are reasons why I would stay away from this road.
All right, well, we've talked about 7 of the worst driving roads of the Bay Area, but now it's time to crown the champion. We're going to talk now about the number 1 worst driving road of the Bay Area. Did you guess what it was? Are you ready? This one really takes the cake. I can say unequivocally that it is the worst driving road of the Bay Area. Here we go. Number 1, Morgan Territory Road. So a couple of years ago, I was looking around for a nice driving road somewhere in the East Bay. And I thought to myself, Mount Diablo is one of the tallest mountains in the Bay Area. There's got to be some interesting driving roads nearby. And so I started taking a look at Google Maps and just looking around to try and find something interesting, and came across Morgan Territory Road. On the south end, it starts near the north of Livermore, and it continues up along the east side of Mount Diablo to connect to another road called Marsh Creek Road, which then leads you over to the small town of Clayton. Now, if you look geographically, it's still pretty much out in the middle of nowhere in the Bay Area. But Morgan Territory Road runs about 15 miles through some fairly unexplored territory in the East Bay. So I decided to go check it out. And oh man, did that turn out to be a really bad idea. The road got extremely narrow very early on in the drive. It was kind of a nerve-wracking journey through the next 15 miles or so, going into a place that I really didn't think was safe for any of us to be driving on. But a few years have passed, and against my better judgment, I decided to go back. So here we are, headed north on Morgan Territory Road. This part of the road obviously is fairly wide and 2-lane road going both directions. Not so bad, right? Well, we just crossed over into Contra Costa County, and just like that, the road suddenly got narrow, and this is where it starts to get interesting. Okay, so up to this point, I would say the road is actually not too bad. It's fairly smooth, even though it's a little bit narrower than I would like. It's not terrible. It's maybe about the same width as some parts of Mines Road, where you can definitely see other cars coming at you, and there's going to be some room to maneuver and let other people get past you. No problem. And if I lived out here, this wouldn't be so bad. I wouldn't mind living out here and having this as my commute. Look at that house over there. Pretty nice. Yeah, definitely wouldn't mind living out here. As you can see, I'm still pretty comfortable with carrying a decent amount of speed through this area. Visibility is still pretty good. Oh, but now we're starting to come up on some blind crests, so I have to slow down a little bit. Okay, now the road is getting a little bit narrower, and we're starting to head uphill a little bit. So the fact that there's no guardrails and a bit of a drop off over there on the left is a little bit worrying. Yeah, and the road's getting a little bit rougher. It's still not terrible, but not great. Look at that big truck over there parked on the side. That is not something that I would want to encounter coming the other way if I was driving along here. Okay, that sign says there's a blind crest coming up. Recommended speed 15 miles an hour. So we slow down and it looks clear, so we're good. Okay, I think we're getting into the sketchy part now. The sign that we just passed said vehicles over 25 feet are not advised. And now I can see why. It's
getting pretty tight here, pretty narrow and windy, and we're gonna have to slow down here. Oh yeah, this is super tight. Oh yeah, this part of the road feels super sketch. Just so narrow. If I came across another car here, I don't even know how I would be able to get by. And there's not really room to pull over here. And at this point I'm like slowing down to a crawl here, not going very fast at all. You know, thank goodness for modern day GPS technology. You know, because I've got my phone here and I've got maps to tell me where I am and how much further I have to go. If I didn't have that, this was, say, 20, 30 years ago, before having GPS and navigation was commonplace, I would be getting really worried about now, wondering if I'm just completely lost out here in the middle of nowhere. Oh man, that was a big bump. Hope I didn't break anything on the suspension with that. Oh no, it's getting tight again. At this point, I'm practically crawling along at 15 or 20 miles an hour. Just feeling kind of stressed about what might be behind the next corner. And it's going to be a little hard to see because I've got the camera stabilization on with the GoPro, but at this point the road is actually pretty rough. You can kind of see it in how much the lower frame of the windshield is shaking and moving around left to right. The stabilization makes the scenery look nice and smooth as we're driving here, but this is definitely some bumpy roads. Apparently the road is so rough that, yeah, the suction cup on my GoPro came loose. So I had to finally come upon a spot where there was actually room for me to pull over for a second and pick up the camera and reattach it. If this road were closed to other traffic, or if I at least knew that it was a one-way road, it would make a pretty fun rally adventure kind of road. I'd feel a little more comfortable taking it at speed. But traveling along this road with how narrow it is, and the possibility that behind every blind turn or small crest is a giant truck or car coming the other way at me, it feels super sketch. It's actually terrifying. Every minute that I'm driving on this road, I feel nervous and anxious and just absolute dread.
one of those roads where if you crash and die out here, someone's going to say, that person didn't belong out here. What were they thinking? They absolutely deserved what they got, driving such a dangerous road for fun. No sympathy at all for that idiot. And I consider myself a rational and intelligent person. I know this and feel the danger and the risk, and I feel like it's not worth it at all to be out here. This whole time I'm questioning my reasons for being out here and praying that something doesn't happen to me. You can tell by how slow I'm driving here that I just don't feel safe going much faster than this. Even though every inch of my body wants this drive to be over as soon as possible, I just want to get this drive over with. And if this was just a short section of the overall road that was like this, I'd say, yeah, get through it quickly and move on. But this road stretches on for several miles like this, and the feeling is just unnerving. I really don't like this road. I drove it once years ago, like I said, and I thought to myself, nope, not coming back here again. But you know what? I guess I'm an idiot.
Well, I think I just lucked out. I had pulled over to adjust the camera and check my map, and another car came along coming the other way, so they passed by, and hopefully, you know, there's not a ton of traffic out here. It's not common, I'm thinking, so hopefully I won't run into any other cars. So maybe that was a lucky break, having that car go by while I was parked off to the side on a wider portion of this road.
Alright, we are back to it, hoping that this road ends fairly soon. Although on the map it still shows several more miles to go. Oh, we're in luck. We're back to being a 2-lane road. Thank goodness. I really think that the worst of this road is behind us at this point. So the road is much wider and we can pick up the pace a little bit. The road's still a little bit bumpy, but far better than the section we just got out of. So, like I was saying, I drove this road several years ago, and, you know, with time, you kind of forget the details, the feelings that you had when you drove a road like this, and maybe you tell yourself, hey, maybe it wasn't so bad. I might have overreacted, some time has passed, maybe I should try it again. And so you come out here and it's like, nope, big nope. Your instincts were right the first time. This was a big mistake to come out here again. So now I've got it on video and I'm memorializing this drive, burning it into my brain and all of our collective memories. Do not drive this road. There's really no reason to, unless you either A, live here, or B, you have to come out here for work or some really compelling reason that I can't think of. Just don't. Okay, I think we are reaching the end of this road, and you cannot believe the sense of relief that I am feeling.
got through all of Morgan Territory Road, and now we are here at Marsh Creek Road. Marsh Creek Road is 10 times better in terms of the width, in terms of visibility, the road condition, the feeling of safety. And now we are back in civilization, and I have to say I feel 10 times better driving this road than I was feeling when we were driving on the sketchiest road of the Bay Area.
Well, there you have it. I think those are the worst driving roads in the Bay Area and that you should avoid them at all costs. I just think all of these roads are so risky and dangerous that I personally would avoid driving them whenever anyone were to suggest driving them. I would typically say, no thanks, that road's a little too sketchy for me. And maybe I'd suggest a different road from my repertoire of favorite roads to drive as an alternative. Because there are plenty of great driving roads, and so there's no point in driving a mediocre or dangerous road when there are so many good roads to drive in the Bay Area. And if you do decide to go out on these roads, you do so at your own risk, because in my mind these are incredibly risky roads that I would not recommend to anybody. Now, I would also love to hear what you thought about some of these roads. Have you driven on some of these roads, and do you agree that these are perhaps the worst driving roads of the Bay Area? Or perhaps you disagree, or you can think of some other roads that you think ought to make this list. If you have any ideas, do let me know in the comments below. I would love to hear them. Also, if you have any horror stories, tales from the road, from driving some of these roads or other roads like them, please let me know. I'd love to hear those stories. All right, that's it for this installment. Thank you as always for watching. I hope you stay safe, stay healthy, and take care of yourselves. I'll see you next time. Peace out. Boba.